Stephanie, just to follow up about your interview with Governor Cuomo, is the picture in New York different than the picture in, say, Nebraska? I mean, you look across the country, not every state's having the same experience.
Absolutely. And that's what's caused this economic crisis that's now inflamed this culture war. So if you are not in one of those hot spots, you are getting angrier and angrier because you don't feel COVID in your backyard, but you feel the pain of having to stay at home. You feel the pain if you ran a small business in Nebraska and you had to have that business shut down. Let's say you ran a gift shop, a retail store. You would be getting no business. You can't pay your rent, yet down the block there's a Walmart or a Target that are allowed to be open because they're considered essential businesses.
Right.
But they sell a whole lot more than toilet paper and Clorox wipes. You can buy bikes and books and jewelry in those stores. So if you ran, let's say, a small business in Nebraska, you would be getting more and more furious with your state government because you don't get to be open or to a limited capacity. So the fact that many states haven't been hit as hard as places like New York, that's made this cultural divide and this anger even worse.
That cultural point, Dan, is so important, the political point. Jonathan Brent mentioned this $1 trillion. Leader McConnell doesn't want to go beyond $1 trillion on the next round. But you cover the campaign so deeply. Will Republicans be forced eventually to buckle? We've seen deals in prior weeks with Speaker Pelosi and Secretary Mnuchin.
I assume we will, because the need is certainly there. I think one of the things to remember about the packages that have been put together so far is that they were done very, very quickly. And I think with the sense that this was not going to be as elongated as it has turned out to be. And as Stephanie says correctly, it is a very complicated process about reopening. And so in trying to design the next phase of the support, I think everybody is to some extent backed in traditional corners and not thinking about what they need to do that is different in structure and in support than they did the first time around. But they will have to come together, because if you listen to Fed Chairman Powell, he's made clear, as have many economists, that the pain is going to be long-standing, that this is likely to be a slow recovery, and that if nothing is done, it could be terribly, terribly damaging to businesses and to individuals.
And Dan, what about the debt issue and deficits? Is that even part of the equation in American politics anymore?
Well, as a voting issue, Bob, it is not. It has not been for some time. And I think one of the things that's happening is that a lot of people who have talked about it as an issue of concern have had to revisit it, in part because we have considerably grown the size of the national debt over the period of the Trump administration, and yet because of low interest rates, service on that debt is not that high, and the United States is still able to continue borrowing. So as an issue, I don't think it is a dramatic issue. There are conservative Republicans who still talk about it and still talk about it as if it is something that is going to have to be dealt with. But in the middle of this crisis, I think everybody has kind of put that to the side as something that, well, we'll have to deal with that down the line. We have to deal with right now the problem of people being out of work and businesses being shuttered.
But back to this culture war question, Jonathan, what's the real story here with the president's decision today to make this announcement about churches and places of worship being an essential gathering place? Was this something he's ready to enforce with the Department of Justice or not?
Well, it's part of, you have to see it in a larger picture. Obviously, there's a huge political dimension to it. And it's not just about his base, about evangelicals. It's also a much bigger campaign strategy that they're following. What they're trying to do is create a contrast with Joe Biden. And this is not my opinion. This is from talking to people who are close to the president, who are talking to him about this. They are trying to create a situation where President Trump is the candidate, and the incumbent, but they're really the candidate of reopening, of action, of dynamism, getting out there, no mask, striding boldly into this reopened future. And, they're going to keep hammering. I expect they're going to make this a point in some of their advertising of Biden, hiding away in his basement, et cetera, et cetera. And one thing they're already talking about privately is the optical contrast of the conventions. So they're sort of salivating over this idea of having a Republican convention that's much more in person, with people packed in, not packed in, but to the largest extent possible, and Democrats doing a more virtual convention. Again, same theme. There are huge risks involved in this strategy. One of them being Trump is, if you look at the polling data, he is slipping among senior voters, and Dan would have more detail and insight on that than I do. But it's very clear to anyone looking at those polls, Trump is not doing well against Biden with seniors, and they're the group most vulnerable. So it's a huge risk.